Yeah, so when we take Clyde, or when I put him in the car, take Clyde, my dog, put him in the car to take him to the vet or something, the whole way it's, it sounds like someone's killing him. It's absolutely horrible.
That is one of the best Clyde impressions I've ever heard.
Thank you. I should record it and actually play it back for you because you can see how close it actually is. But yeah, so Clyde is the better trained of the two dogs. He will come when he's called. He'll walk and he'll walk next to you. But the minute he sees another dog or another person, he's all over the place. You can't get him to stop. Mm-hmm. Bonnie, on the other hand, is like you had mentioned in one of our podcasts previously. She is a cat. She won't walk. She'll get under your feet. She just wants to cuddle. If we take her out and there are any dogs, she'll try to bite the dog. And she's just, you let her out in the backyard and you can call for her for an hour and she will just look at you and go, fuck you.
Yeah.
Unless there's a treat involved. or if they're out together, sometimes we let them out one at a time just so they'll listen and actually do their business. We will call Clyde and go, Clyde, you're such a good boy. Good boy. And Bonnie will then come running because she wants to get the good girl stuff. Or it will say treat and he'll come running and she'll follow. But that's the only time she'll come quick. Otherwise, the rest of the time she's just like, yeah, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. I don't care.
And in case our listeners don't know, Bonnie and Clyde are actually from the same litter, which makes it even a little more odd. Although being different genders, maybe that explains some of it. But right or no?
I don't know. It could possibly be very much that. But so we may have mentioned this before. I apologize if it's repeating, but
we always repeat ourselves.
We always repeat ourselves. That's what makes a podcast.
I think I've heard this episode. No, you haven't. It's new.
Litter mates, after all the research that we've done, litter mates are the most difficult to train. So I don't know if it has to do with them being opposite sex or not. In fact, I think that might make it easier, but they're not easily trained. There's a lot more work that has to go into it. You are supposed to train them separately and then slowly, not that they're apart the whole time, but if you're going to go do a training session, you do it with Clyde first, and then you bring Bonnie out later and do it with Bonnie. And then as soon as you get that answer or get that behavior locked in, then you can start to try to do it together, but you can't do it until that behavior is completely 100% ingrained in their brain.
Not to change the topic, but do you know I've created a new online dating service?
I have not heard of this.
Yeah,
please enlighten us.
It's called Litter Mates.
Litter Mates. Oh, you could go so many places.
I know.
That is $1 billion idea right there.
See? Somebody else is going to take it because we're too damn lazy to do it. But I think our wives would forbid us to be.
Probably.
No, honey, really, it's a money-making idea. It's not because we want to find our own litter mates.
Right. Well, is it really a dating thing? I mean, it would probably go over well in the South. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Wow. We love you, Southern listeners.
Yes, we do. So much. I live here. I'll probably be murdered.
Yes, probably will.
But let's change the subject. I could get in so much trouble.
Well, I think it's time you did. I'm usually the one who's in trouble.
No.
Okay.
No, it's all me. I'm the one who tells people to go to Twitter and give us a response, and then they do. And I know I spend 6 weeks away from it and then go, oh, I'm sorry, you responded to me, and then type a message back.
Nice. Yeah. This is why nobody ever responds to. I'm never responding to your question again.
That's right. Yep. Yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So litter mates. Okay, so let's put.
How did we get on the topic of dog training? You should tell people because it was an interesting segue since that was part of our conversation last week, all about segways and hoverboards and stuff, pogo sticks.
It was. We were actually discussing how they will piss themselves dry, and I said just like dogs. We were actually having a conversation about something else where you pissed yourself dry, and I say just like the dogs when you walk them. And you said your dogs don't walk, and then you proceeded to do your impression.
No, Hold on,
of
hold on.
Bonnie.
My dogs walk. They walk very well. They just don't walk on a leash next to us.
It sounds to me like it's not their problem with walking. It sounds like it's yours.
It's always the human's problem. You know that, right? That's the very first thing someone who trains dogs will say. It's not the dog's fault. It's the human's fault. I will take responsibility for that. I
I
100% will.
totally agree with that. And that is, and I don't know if all the trainers say it, but the ones I've spoken with will say that, and they are correct. When we had our first dog before we got married, we were idiots. We had no idea what to teach this dog. And he was so well, I don't want to say poorly behaved, because he wasn't. He was a nice dog, but man, he would chew things and just to get attention. And oh my gosh, I had a bunch back in the day. They used to have upgrades on United Airlines, and so, not a sponsor. And so I had probably 10 upgrades that they gave me, because I flew them a lot. And these are golden. I give them one on a flight, and I get upgraded to first class. And so they were awesome. And he chewed up like 10 of them. And
Oh, no.
I rode it coach for several weeks because of that. It was
Damn dog.
Yep. Hid
So
my car keys in the waterbed once.
So we had they weren't young dogs necessarily, because I had mine for a long time. Jen had hers for a long time, but it was right around the time we got married. Jen had received a fairly substantial check from her father, who had passed away several years before that. And it was kind of a buyout because she would get checks monthly from his old business, because he was in insurance sales. Mm-hmm. And this was the buyout at the end of this policy. So she got a fairly substantial check that she wanted to put towards the wedding. And we put it down on the table, and we left to go do something else. We came back, and it was destroyed. One of the dogs had eaten the entire check with just a couple of pieces left out. Luckily, the lawyer was able to get the check reprinted, but oh my God, that feeling you get. And these dogs had never chewed anything else. Yeah. They were not chewers at all. It was a pug and a schnauzer, but our hearts just sank. That
would be horrible. An excellent name for a rock band too.
Pug. Our hearts just sank. Pug and Schnauzer. I think that would be a good coffee shop too.
Pug and Schnauzer.
Pug and Schnauzer.
Wouldn't be bad. You'd have to serve.
We're coming up with all these ideas, and people that are listening. Luckily, we don't have a huge listener base, but all the people that are listening steal these ideas and create their own businesses.
So lucky we don't have a big listener base. Thanks for keeping it from getting to be a large listener base. No, I'm going to do something goofy now so we don't get more listeners.
Right.
Because I don't want that. Because then they'll steal all our good ideas.
But I tell you what, folks, if you want to share these really good ideas with some of your friends, or you want to share the bad ones with some of your enemies, just share this podcast with one other person and encourage them to listen.
Pug and Schnauzer coffee shop.
Or it could be a bar too, Pug and Schnauzer.
Instead of sprinkling, shaving chocolate, semi-sweet chocolate over the top of it, would you put like dog hair in it? Right at the top
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to now, though. I'm going to come up with a logo for Pug and Schnauzer. And I'm going to post it on our social media network.
Wow. Too much time on my hands.
COVID, baby. COVID.
Yeah, well. And it's funny. I talked to someone else, someone we work with the other day, and this person, I won't say he or she because it would give it away. No, it wouldn't. But this person said during the whole COVID thing that he has spent quite a bit of time doing stuff around the house. And I want to be clear about this, because you and I are often home shored or on the road home shored, that sort of thing. I don't feel guilty about that, because you know what? I am often up at 2 a.m. because I can't sleep and I'm working on stuff. And so if I want to, take the bike for a spin for half an hour or something, I'm not going to feel guilty about it. It's
right. And that's one of the reasons we chose this line of work. Yeah. So we have the freedom to do things like that.
For sure. Yeah. I was 11:30 last night putting together a deck of slides for for a
Yeah.
presentation today that ultimately canceled.
Nice. That happens to me
because
all the time.
because the person it was for, who we had geared it toward, failed to show up for work, and I'm going, "Welcome to the car business," because that's
Wow.
all I know, and it was not
Wow.
pretty. But
So
again,
I was talking to another coworker of ours, and I was so being home. We are a little bit more flexible. I have a problem, and it's my OCD that I do still feel like between the hours of 8 and 5, I need to be working.
sure,
And a lot of our coworkers may or may not follow that exactly because, again, we do tend to work beyond work hours quite a bit. So, and part of me is I am trying to do the 8 to 5. So after 5, I am home and doing stuff with my
sure.
family,
And
or
I think that's
I'm working
important
on potty
with
mouths, right?
that's important with Peyton too, though. I think you have a
Right.
younger, a younger child at home, and I think it's awesome that you focus on that to spend that time. We're empty nesters now, so Lisa's tired of seeing me anyway most of the time. So why don't
Right.
you just keep working? As I hear,
Exactly.
ice cubes tinkling in a glass. Uh,
Nice.
no, I'm just kidding.
Nice.
That's
But
me. That's me
I,
tinkling in a glass.
tinkling. Oh, now we're back to tinkling.
Yeah,
Pissed
sorry.
him dry. Um, anyway, so I was talking to this coworker, and we were talking about uh, working during the week and looking forward to the weekend, and how you're excited for the weekend. And granted, this is during COVID, so we're at home all the time.
Right.
Looking forward to the weekend because you're done with work, and then you get to the weekend and you're so bored because there's nothing else to do because of COVID that you're excited to get back to work, and it's just this vicious cycle. And then I
Yes.
made the comment while we were talking about it, and I said, the only difference is during the week I can't day drink. And this
There
person gave, and you'll know who it
yeah.
is, but this person gave a very stated pause and then said, "Hasn't stopped me." Completely
No.
joking, of course, but still, the timing was impeccable.
There has joking aside, there have been several studies that are talking about the increase not only in alcohol sales and so on, but people who are self-admitting that they are either day drinking or having a cocktail before quitting time or whatever.
Right.
And I haven't seen any, but I gotta believe there have to be some Zoom examples of
Oh, I'm
people
sure.
who are hammered.
Well, I love that there's some TikTok videos where you see people in front of their computer, and they've got a clock in the lower right hand corner, and it's ticking, and it says 4:59. They're holding a coffee cup and they take a sip, and 5 o'clock rolls around. They take out the wine glass and pour the wine from the coffee cup into the wine glass.
They're just changing vessels.
Exactly. Yeah. I
That's
love
awesome.
those. I love those. No, I come from a very European family too, and the one thing that frustrates me about our work culture is I don't have a problem with people having a drink for lunch. I really don't.
Mm,
And I think part of the reason, and again, this is my personal opinion, and I'm sure someone will come down on me for saying this. I do not have a problem with people, unless they're getting behind the wheel of a car, drinking during the day or just taking the edge off, because I think part of the problem with the United States, and there's a high level of alcoholism,
mm,
has less to do with people day drinking than just binging. And I think if more people
mm,
were allowed or comfortable having a glass of wine for lunch or a beer for lunch,
sure.
probably we'd have fewer instances of alcoholism or alcohol related accidents because of that. That's just,
It
again,
doesn't
that's my
it,
opinion.
it doesn't seem to be as prevalent in Europe.
Right.
Countries like Italy and well, even Germany and Switzerland and so on. And I'm not saying that it's not there, but it just doesn't seem to be. You don't hear about it as much. What what I find to be interesting though is I remember the days when the it wasn't just to have a glass of wine at lunch; it was the martinis at lunch.
Right.
And
Yeah.
oh my gosh, one of the guys I worked for was he would have 2, maybe 3 martinis or Manhattans, and this is at lunch, And we're talking about being in the car business. This is many years ago, but he would come back to the dealership and couldn't grab his butt with either hand. Because he'd end up leaving, on half an hour later anyway, because he didn't want to be at the store anymore.
Right. And I caught the tail end of some of that. I've had times where I've seen GMs or owners come back from lunch and have to sleep it off in the car for a little while.
Wow.
That's not unusual, but
Yeah.
I'm making a broad generalization. Of course, there were still issues. Of course, there were still alcoholics, but I'm just saying, I think the opportunity is a lot more prevalent when you're restricted on the things that you have to do.
Sure.
It's just, I think that's just the way it is. Or, I also think that there's some people that either label themselves or other people label them as alcoholics when they're really, in fact, not, because it's more of, maybe they'll have a drink or two, but does that really constitute alcoholism? Or does it affect how they function or how they live their life? I think there's so many ways you can argue that.
Yep.
And trust me, I've had those arguments in my head all the time because that's what I do. I argue with myself. I will play devil's advocate. You could come and say that same stuff to me and I'll argue it to the death.
Well, I think that's fun to be able to do that because it challenges the mind to think about, okay, now let's say you come from this perspective. Because let's face it, whether you call it arguing or discussing or whatever, that's part of the art of negotiating. That's part of the art of selling, frankly, is being able to represent your viewpoint. And we know in sales, it's not always a viewpoint. It depends what you're trying to sell. And the example I'll give is we used to have a saying in the car business, there's an ass for every seat.
Right.
And what it means is don't fall in love with any particular vehicle, because some people will like vehicles that you don't like. And I think about one of my first demonstrator cars that used to give out demos to salespeople was an Oldsmobile Omega.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, the early 80s. I think it was an 81, if I'm not mistaken. And it was a two-tone blue and white Olds Omega, kind of a square car, an X body platform, which was the same as the Chevy Citation. And I think there was a Pontiac too. I can't remember. But the point was, it was a box on wheels, essentially. And I'm going, oh, this isn't, because we had the Cutlass Supreme Coupe, which was this swoopy, really nice looking vehicle that everybody wanted. And of course, that's what everybody wanted for a demo too, is because Cutlasses were great cars. But no, when you're new, you start off with an Omega and you go, but it gave me an appreciation for the car. And when people came in looking for Omegas, I didn't say, well, yeah, I drove one. It's a piece of crap, because that would not be very smart.
Right.
But rather I said, yeah, I drove one and I learned some pretty cool things about them. And so you change just a little bit. Say hi to Lisa.
Oh, hi, Lisa.
I'm going, who the hell's in the background of, oh, wait, that's my background. That's Lisa.
Yeah, as I was waving. You're probably
yeah, I know. Nick's waving at me to tell me to shut up, which is what you normally wave at me for. Hey, Ixnay.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop it.
At least I was waving but John, usually I'm waving only one finger when I'm waving at you, not my whole hand.
Yeah, pointing. It's pointing. Right. It's not flipping me off.
Pointing to the sky.
You wave. I don't mind telling you, and I've watched a little bit of The Crown on Netflix. And you wave. No, the Queen actually waved like this. Oh
yeah, she does. It's kind of that.
It's like this. Yeah,
she's
like
cupping.
that. She is.
Yes.
Like, bring it all to me. Bring it all to me. I can smell it all.
Bring me the money. Bring me.
There you go.
More gold. Lisa, you can wave. Did you wave it, Nick? Okay, hold on. Wow, that's a bright light there. Thank you. Phew.
Bright light, burn baby.
Bright light, big city. Anyway, yeah. So you've got to be prepared to accept either a car like that or just a position that you may or may not necessarily agree with.
Right.
That's sales, man.
Yeah, that's
So,
sales, baby. So
well, that's
what
part
would
of it.
be in between the Omega and the Cutlass? Would that be a Tornado?
No, no, the Tornado was a high-end car. That was the
Seriously?
nicest. Yeah. The Tornado, was the first non-Cadillac, General Motors car I saw that was over $20,000, and I think it was a 1982 that was a demo that my boss had, and it
Hmm.
was beautiful. Oh my gosh. It was a very cool car, but 20 grand back when Cutlasses were, I'm guessing now, were probably 12 or 13.
So I
I'm
had
thinking,
my first car was an 81 Tornado, and
oh,
I
nice.
have to say it rode very, very nicely,
Yeah,
but I don't think it was high end by any means. But then again, that was
it was.
late or that was mid 90s when I was driving in 1981. So,
Yeah.
you know,
So
put
not
it
with a
in,
lot of miles on it or no?
oh, I don't remember. It was probably 30,000 miles on it.
That's it?
Oh yeah, not a lot of
Wow.
miles.
Jeez.
Not
No,
like
they're
the other
great.
one. I told you about Murray's 76 or 77 Tornado without the last time I saw it, it was sinking into the ground next to a hangar on an airport somewhere.
Nice.
Probably hadn't run in 10 years.
Well, I mean, they were great cars, and not a lot of people knew that they were front wheel drive.
Right.
And
I put
the
my Jeep Wrangler in the ditch more than I ever put my Tornado.
yeah, Tornado was tough because it was a big V8
Yeah.
and still front wheel drive,
Yep.
and much like the Eldorado.
Yep.
And the Eldorado used to be rear wheel drive until they used the Tornado platform at some point. I don't know what year that was, but in the early 70s, I would guess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I have to
cool
admit,
car.
it was a great car. It was a
Yep.
fantastic car.
Cool car. So to answer your question, between the Omega, and they changed over the years, but there was the Forenza and the Omega, which were kind of, the Forenza was a J body car, which was the Cadillac Cimarron,
Okay.
and the Chevrolet Cavalier. They were on the J body platform. And then the X body was the Citation and the Omega and the Buick Skylark and so on. And then there was a body. I can't remember. No, that was the Century, Buick Century, and the Cutlass Calais, it was called.
Wow.
Cutlass
They should bring
Sierra.
some of these names back.
Yeah, the Cutlass Sierra, the Cutlass Calais. Yeah, because they got rid of Oldsmobile. They have all
Right.
these extra names laying around.
Yeah, exactly.
And Pontiac. Yeah, bring back the Aztec. That was an ugly ass car.
Oh, that was an ugly car. You know, it was a
Oh,
great car though. We had an Aurora,
oh yeah, Aurora was a nice car.
and the Bravada. Bravada was great too. That one we put between my mom, my wife, and myself put
Yep.
200,000 miles on that Bravada,
Bravada was a
and it was
Chevy Blazer, essentially,
yep,
same body
yep,
style, and yeah.
yep.
Um, and what
But the
else did
Aurora
Buick?
was fun. The Aurora was like getting into a cockpit because the
Yeah,
whole thing wrapped around you.
that was kind of, if I may be so blunt, a poor man's Tornado is kind of what
Okay,
they tried to do with the Aurora, and then the Aurora they tried. Then this is how General Motors was kind of struggling at the time, in my opinion. Obviously, they were because they got rid of Oldsmobile, Pontiac, Hummer, and yeah, everything else, Saturn, and what they were doing was they were going to create a separate brand for Aurora. So it was going to be its own. It wasn't going to be under the Oldsmobile
okay,
badge anymore, which I found to be kind of interesting. But
yeah, that is
yeah,
interesting.
I'm
I think there's
surprised
a
I
lot of
remember any of that.
experimentation with that. But the Aurora was a fast car, and it was very for its time, it was very technologically advanced.
Yeah, that was probably a 3 liter or a 3.6 liter V6 in
Yep.
the Aurora.
Yeah, they
And
used it as a pace car.
oh, did
So
they? Yeah.
I think I don't know if it was you or another person turned me on to this YouTube channel. It is a whole channel, but there was one specific video. It was like 30 minutes long where these people who go and they get barn finds and they clean them up. They're
Hmm.
detailers.
Hmm.
Well, they were in this barn and the guy's still alive and owns all these cars and none of them are really everything's for sale, but he wasn't actively trying to sell
Yeah.
anything, but he had like 350 cars.
Oh my
And
gosh.
Yeah, and they're all stacked in all different kinds and ranging from Rolls Royces to a little. He'll probably have it. He has Cutlass in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Mm.
Just this wide range, and he actually has an Aurora pace car with all of
Oh,
the pace car stuff on it. Still,
yeah.
it was pretty
Wow.
neat. I thought it was neat. I'll have to look that up and share that with you.
Yeah, it's awesome. Aurora pace car. Well, and I wonder how political all of that was, or did they have to buy in to get that? Because there were a lot
Oh,
of
I'm
Corvettes.
sure.
I'm wondering to what degree that was all.
Right.
I'm sure they didn't just select, okay, Corvette, come on. I'm sure they bought into
Oh,
that
absolutely.
sponsorship
100%.
sort of thing. Yeah,
100%.
yeah, I bet they did.
But those were some great cars. And to finish off the Bravada, sorry, I
Yeah.
got you off track there. Bravada was a high end
Very nice
Blazer. Yeah, not
Very
quite
nice.
as high end as a Cadillac because they had the exact same model Cadillac as well. I don't remember
Huh?
what. Yeah, they had. Maybe it wasn't Cadillac. Was it Cadillac?
No, it wasn't Cadillac. Might have been GMC.
No, because it went. I think it went Chevy, GMC, uh, Bravada, Oldsmobile, and then there was
Yeah.
another one that was the exact same body style, but it was
Well,
even the
Buick didn't. I don't think Buick had one
no,
then.
it wasn't Buick. No, they did steal that body at the end, like right
Yeah.
when Oldsmobile started going away. They
Yep.
moved it over, but I
Yep.
don't remember. I thought there was one step higher.
No, the
Uh,
Cadillac, the first Cadillac SUV, as I recall, was the Escalade. I think.
no, and the Escalade was out, but I thought they had one that was smaller than the Escalade. I have been wrong before, and I will admit if I'm wrong. I just don't
Well,
remember. We could look it
you've
up.
been you've
That
been
would be
wrong a
totally
lot.
against us. I have really. That's
Yeah.
why I have a podcast. How many times in one podcast can Nick be wrong? I'm
Oh,
trying to keep
that's
our listeners on their toes.
oh, they're on their toes. Why else
They
would
are.
they be listening to this?
They're on their toes, ready to jump off the bridge. Yeah.
Well, I got to hear what they say next. We've probably saved a lot of jumpers just because
We
of our
maybe
rant
could have or caused just as many. Who knows?
possible. I don't want to be responsible for that.
No, not
Do you
at
have
all.
birds in your background? I'm hearing tweeting.
No, that's just me. I
Oh.
like to tweet a lot when I'm listening. That it soothes me. Yes, I've got a lot of birds in my backyard. A
Okay.
lot of cardinals, actually. Cardinals and bluebirds, blue
Very
jays.
nice.
Yeah.
Blue Jays. Oh, only baseball team birds.
Yes. Yep. The Cardinals kick the Blue Jays' ass all
Yeah.
the time.
Do you have any Orioles? Are they coming in?
No, but I have a few twins.
That's not a bird.
I know.
Wow. Nice job.
Thanks.
That's about as close as we're going to get to baseball, I think, for a
This
little
year?
while anyway.
Right. Well,
No, I
they're
think
bringing
they'll
back the
probably play
important
something.
sports. Yeah, they're bringing back the important sports, the ones that I hate the most, basketball. Sorry, those people from Indiana that are listening to our podcast. I am not a basketball fan.
Well, I am. I mean, I used to play, not well, but I played and enjoyed it, and so I tend to watch it a little more. I care less for professional basketball now than I ever have. I used to really enjoy watching Jordan, and because we lived in Chicago at the time. But I just have a hard time with it now, just because of the John Wooden is rolling in his grave every time somebody carries the ball when they're dribbling it, because they do
Right.
almost every time they touch it.
Yeah.
They would have been called for traveling back in even as soon as recently as the 70s.
Right. Now, I played basketball too. I enjoy but that's me with a lot of sports. I enjoy playing certain sports more than I like watching sports. I'm hockey. I loved playing hockey, and I will watch games once in a while, but it's just not as much fun to watch it as it was to play it. And basketball's the same thing, especially basketball. And even then, I would much rather watch a live game than watch one on television. So they're different levels.
That's a really good point. And I think basketball is that unusual one for me that I agree with you. I prefer watching them in person because there's so much more to it.
There's a show around it.
Yeah, and baseball is kind of that way too. depending upon where you go see it.
Yeah,
Wrigley Field is a great place to watch a game,
right.
and even the Miller Park
Yeah, Busch
for the
Stadium's a
Brewers.
lot of fun too,
Busch
both the
Stadium,
old
I
one and the new
understand.
one.
Yep, I have not been. Uh, I don't think I've been to Busch Stadium, but
I've been to
yeah,
I have been one of those very lucky people that had the opportunity to go to both Busch stadiums
that's awesome.
because they were basically built on the same spot.
How about Yankee stadiums?
I have never been to any Yankee stadium. I've been to the stadium in Baltimore.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I
me
have
too.
I have yet to go to the new Twins stadium or Target Field. Um,
Baltimore, is that not the one that's hold on now. Is it um I'm trying to get this correct. Yeah, I think it's Baltimore that they have the 'cause isn't it like backed up to a hotel?
yes, yep, and you can look from the hotel down into
Yeah, I
the
was
yes,
at the workout room and they're
yep,
doing batting practice
yeah,
right
isn't
out
that
the
cool?
window. That was awesome. I
Yep,
love that park. That was just really a nice little, not a big massive place or anything, but what a
yeah.
nice complex.
I feel bad that Baltimore gets such a bad rap because of its crime because it really is a beautiful city.
I'm not sure it's you know what with all the things that are going on right now, I'm not sure that it is any more of a problem in Baltimore than
Dangerous,
it is anywhere else. It's just,
right?
gosh, it's just a shame to
Well,
see all this stuff, and it's
I
too bad.
feel bad for any city because it's kind of like the same here in Nashville. Nashville's gotten a lot of press in the last few years because it's a growing city and it's huge
Yep.
and people are moving there constantly. Well, I can name 15 other cities in the United States that are seeing the same thing. It's not
Yeah.
just Nashville.
No, for sure.
But there are also those cities that are like Baltimore, Detroit, who have had some issues and are said to be so dangerous and stuff. But I bet you a good percentage, I'm not going to say the majority, but a good percentage of the people that live there say it's a great place to live in both places or in
I would
multiple
say that.
cities that have the same rep.
Well, Chicago has gotten kind of a bad rap, and when we lived there, it was the place. And people
Right.
complained about, well, the dailies have run this city for 40 years and yada yada. Uh, eh, but it was safe, and you
Right.
could go downtown at all hours of the night, and that's not the case right now. And so uh, uh, no, this is not a time to get political, but I find this interesting, and I'm just going to make a comment, and it's not going to be political in nature, other than to say that the vast majority of the big cities are and have been Democrat controlled for many, many years.
That's not a
Chicago
political
is not.
thing. There's been statistics that have come out that say that show
Chicago
numbers
has
based on
Democratic mayoral leadership for like 80 years or something like
Mhm.
that. So and I'm not saying that's right or wrong or indifferent, but what I am saying is that if something is not right, then I don't understand why there wouldn't, have a change, make a change, like happens in the office of the president. If at
Right.
some point we say, you know what, I'm ready to move in a different direction. So you go from Barack Obama to Donald Trump. Now, what's going to happen next? I don't know. We'll see. But you
Right.
make those changes through history, from Reagan to well Bush Senior, and I don't know where all of that stands, but it seems like over time, that's it's quite amazing, frankly, that whether a city is doing well or doing poorly, and I think you could make an argument for Chicago and all of Illinois right now that, oh my gosh, they are in so much trouble financially
Mhm.
that but there doesn't seem to be a preponderance of effort to change the seas like we do on a
Right.
national level. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just
No,
interesting to me.
it's a good observation, and I think it's spot on. And
Hmm.
there have been because of what's going on with COVID and things like that, there have been a lot of studies that show they talk about political divides, and a lot of that
Mm.
political divide has to do with the big cities versus rural areas, and the fact that
Sure.
most cities are a lot more liberal than they are, and
Yep.
a lot more of the rural areas are more conservative. And that just kind of speaks to, the belief, I think, the belief system of the two demographics, again, in broad generalization, using
Yep.
broad
Right.
strokes, that most more liberal people probably tend to live in the cities, because that's the type of environment they prefer, and that's
Mhm.
why they are more liberal versus people who are a little bit more conservative. They don't want to be in such tight knit communities. They want to be a little bit more spread out, and that's why the rural areas are a little bit more
Mm.
conservative. Again, I'm that is my opinion, but I am taking that from what some other that I've read in some news stories in the New York Times
Yeah.
and Time and all of those other places. It's exactly what they're saying. And it's
Sure.
based, a lot of this research is coming out. It's been around, but a lot of this research is now coming out because of COVID, and how they're using that to politicize a lot of other things. But they do make a good point at that level.
Mhm. Yeah, just generally speaking, and I kinda take COVID out of the mix. And it's not that it hasn't been politicized, because it certainly, surely has been. But that to me is all Monday morning quarterbacking.
Oh
When
yeah.
people are judging, governors and even the president and others, and saying, what a stupid thing he did, or what a terrible thing she did, or, whatever. I, I think the vast majority, at least I hope, are doing what they really think is right at the time. And you're making these decisions in real time. So
Yep.
you don't have the luxury of looking back on something and saying, "Oh, I wish I would have done that." Well, everybody's going to say that if they're being honest. But
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and
I think that's a little different.
I'm going to probably piss off a lot of our conspiracy
Oh,
theorists
good. Here we
listeners,
go.
but
Because
I
we
made
have
this.
a lot of them.
We do. I made this comment to another coworker today, and I've always thought it, but I finally came out and said it today. I said, I feel like I'm a fairly intelligent person, not smart, but I think I'm a fairly intelligent person,
You are.
and I can't think even two steps ahead of myself. I if something really good or really bad happens, I can't go, I planned that. It was, 6 years in the making. No, it's usually a surprise. I can't for the life of me think that there's anyone out there that's really smart enough to come up with some of these plans to truly cause mayhem because that's their goal in life. To your
Yeah.
point, it's
Yeah.
they're in the moment. They're trying to make the decisions with the information they have. Sometimes that
Sure.
information's bad. Sometimes it's good. They make the decisions, and they're going to have to. It's going to fall to history to judge them at that point. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think I have a tough time thinking that anything is thought out that far in advance with that many details in place to really cause some of these things to truly happen the way they're
Well,
said to have happened.
and whether that's true or not, because you're right. Like, I mean, we're just making conjecture, and based on information we have. But to me, even whether it's true or not, the the ability that we have as a society to look at history gives us a great deal of instruction about what to do and what not to do.
Right.
And I think what happens, unfortunately, with trying to rewrite history, and even so far as, and again, not trying to offend anybody, but tearing down statues, things like that.
Mhm.
It's trying to rewrite history and erase someone from history. And admittedly, maybe we shouldn't be celebrating someone who has since been shown to be, uh, you know, uh, less than an ideal citizen. But you're using today's standards to judge somebody from 100 or hundreds of years ago.
Right.
And to say suddenly that George Washington was an evil man because they had slaves, or his family, Thomas Jefferson, had slaves. I don't, while by today's standards, that would surely be a reason for us to, you know, uh, uh, be angry with someone, or to
Mhm.
just say that's
Demonize them.
not correct, and demonize them. But back then, you have to stay within the norm of that timing. If you don't want to repeat those mistakes, you cannot let society forget them. And
Right.
a lot of that has to do with, things like even the Third Reich, and how if we do not remember that stuff, if we don't recall that
Right.
and secure that
Well,
knowledge,
and
we
and
run the risk of repeating it.
absolutely. Who said that? There was a famous that was a famous quote.
Being more famous than we are.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Barely. Barely. But in all seriousness, and a lot of those things are terrible. And trust me, my family has taken the brunt of the
Yes.
whole World War II Nazi invasion
Yep. Yep.
in a pretty big way. But at the same time, there's a lot of good that comes out of evil as well.
Well, there
And
can be.
there can
I
be.
think I think that's the human spirit. That's the part where if things go poorly, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can't
No,
stop myself. If things go badly because of some evil or some whatever, it's one of my favorite speakers of all time was Jim Rohn, Rohn, and Rohn said, It's not important what happens to you. What's important is what you do with what happens to you.
exactly. Yep.
And so that's the whole evil
Yep.
thing. I don't
Yep.
think it's good inherently that comes out of evil, but it's how you react to evil.
Correct. That's a very good way of saying that.
Yep.
Absolutely. And so, there are things that have come from it. If we didn't have the Nazi Party, if we didn't have
Mm.
Hitler who tried to take over the world and do so many evil deeds, we wouldn't have an interstate system in the United States. We wouldn't have cloverleaf on ramps. We wouldn't have Volkswagen.
Hmm.
I not, you can argue if Volkswagen was a good thing or not, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, so it again, because we know that Hitler was a big part of that. Should we get rid of our interstate system? Should we get rid of our on ramps?
Mm.
There's arguments for other reasons to get rid of it, but that has nothing to do with the person. And
Right.
I know that's again that there's a big stretch between what you were saying about statues and versus judging people. I mean, we know inherently that Hitler was bad. But my point to that was my grandmother, who lost most of her family to concentration camps and to the
Mm-hmm.
Nazis, who was a Jewish woman in Europe during World War II, once told me that before all of that started happening, she would listen to Hitler speak on the radio, and the entire family would sit there and listen and just be amazed by the progressiveness of that man.
Hmm.
There were very few people until the atrocities started happening. There were very few people that were against Hitler, which is why he got to be as big and as strong as he
Sure.
was, and
Sure.
he was able to do as many evil deeds because he was a good speaker, and the ideas that he was spreading was in the beginning was something that a lot of people bought into.
Well, people
And
wanted to
if they
hear
hadn't,
like that. Yeah.
yeah, and if people hadn't done that in the beginning, he never would have gotten to the power that he was at. So
Yeah.
again, that goes to judging people in the time, making decisions based on the information you have,
For
and that's
sure.
the best you can do.
Yes. And that's why it's critical for us to react appropriately. And frankly, in many cases, kind of like what we're in right now, is stand up, dust ourselves off, and do something good with it. Because
Exactly.
there are bad things that happen. And honestly, that's since the beginning of time.
Yep. It's not
That's
going to change.
no, it's always good versus evil, but the difference is in terms of what wins out. People are so as oh boy, here we go. As a as a Christian, my belief is, and this I never really used to think, because people would say, "Oh, uh, we people are basically good." And while I'd love to think that, I don't think it's true. I think we are horrible people, and I'm pointing at myself as well. And that's the reason, as a Jesus follower, that we needed Jesus, is because we are inherently bad people, and I know I am. And so it's no one is perfect, no one is right 100% of the time. And if you're a biblical scholar, you know that many times it's said that Romans 3:23 and there is no one good, not even one. And I'm sure I'm misquoting it, but it says that something close to that. So I'll look it up. Anyway, but it's all about everyone as a sinner, and we occasionally do some nice things, but that's not our nature.
Yeah.
So
No,
anyway,
you're absolutely right.
yeah. Well,
So to that
I think
point,
I
I'm
am.
going to change the subject, but not change the subject because you had mentioned not knowing that exact quote from the Bible.
Yeah.
I don't think it really matters because I grew up with the Catholic Bible,
Mm-hmm.
and so we were experimenting with some churches down here, and much different places you can go. And we went to a Baptist church for a little while, Southern
Uh-huh.
Baptist, and they were reading
Is there a
some
Northern
lines out
Baptist?
of.
I'm sorry.
I would love to know that, honestly. There could be. There might not be. I don't know. What's the difference between a First Baptist? How many First Baptist churches are there? And where's the Second Baptist church? Or the
Okay.
third or the fourth?
I have a separate joke I have to tell you about that later when you're done.
Okay.
But real quickly, I have Romans 3:23. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. That's it.
Okay. So
So I was kind of close, and
which
it was feeding my point anyway.
it was no, but my point to that is now what Bible did that come from? Because if you look up a different Bible,
Sure.
it might be the same intent,
Yep.
but it's going to be a different set of words. And I find that so fascinating.
Well, it is. There are, when you look at how the Bible has come around, first in Hebrew, some in Greek, and then it went to German in many cases, depending upon where you were, and the Gutenberg press, and so it's gone through all these iterations, and today there are different translations.
Mm-hmm.
Some are more accurate than others. Some it's kind of a a biblical deli tray where people will pick things they want and throw away things they don't want.
Yeah, and there are parts of certain Bibles that are there in that Bible that don't exist in a different Bible. Again, I don't know if this is the case, but since I use the example, there might be something in the Southern Baptist Bible that's not in the Catholic Bible. And
well,
basically
it depends,
the same
and it's not necessarily a Southern Baptist Bible, or different people.
That was my point. I'm using that as an example.
No, I understand, but so there are many different translations. I typically use the English Standard, the ESV, but I have an NIV that I use, the New International Version, or something like that. Some people use the King James Version, which is all the weepeth and talketh and things like that. But thinking that it's more traditional in its in its translation. I can't speak to that. I think you have to follow the ones that make sense and which one speaks to you.
Right.
And you're right. Are there some books that in many translations are left out? There are. And so some people point to that and say, well, it's not the unerring word of God if you are leaving some out or picking and choosing what went in. And much like the Apostle Paul, I have come to believe that God inspires what he wants to end up in the Bible. So it's not a perfect science, but it's not science. It's the.
I was going to say, wow, that was pretty big. Yeah, it was pretty big words there comparing the Bible to science. But I'm going to leave that one alone. No.
Well, if you're a God follower, you should know that God controls all things, science included.
See,
don't think that scientists invented science. They're students. They're students, not the professor.
That's why you have scientists in the Vatican, right? On that note, John, you want to talk more about the Vatican? You want to tell us what you think about the Bible or anything else that's going on in the world? Head up to our website, PoddiMouths.com, and leave us a comment, or head over to one of our social media outlets, areas, whatever you want to call them, and comment there. John will get right on top of it because I'll probably let it sit for 3 weeks before I get to it, but that's just me. I know, and it's horrible. Find me on TikTok and start talking to me there. That's probably where I spend most of my time now. Anyway, John, anything else you want to add?
One last thing real quickly, because we talked about, I wanted to make sure I delivered on the promise. There was and you've heard about people, who are shopping for churches all the time, and they go, "Oh, I didn't like it there. I went to this church and I tried out a different one." And we used to do that when we would go from, place to place because we moved a lot. And so there's a guy on a deserted island. He's an architect by trade, and he's stuck there for 20 years. Well, they finally came across him and found him there. And here he is, and he's designed these beautiful buildings. And this guy's interviewing him, and he said, "Whoa, that is an amazing building." And he's wires and just done some beautiful things. He said, "What is that?" He says, "Well, that's my house." He said, "Wow, that's amazing." And he looks a little further in the distance, and he sees this beautiful, massive construction that he looked at. And he said, what is that?" He says, "That's my church." He says, "Wow, that's your church. That's amazing." And he looked back, I don't know, the other direction about a half mile away. And he said, "Well, what's that building? That looks beautiful too." He said, "That's where I used to go to church." He's alone on a deserted island.
Yeah. Nice. No, our biggest thing too, just again, I know we're trying to wrap it up, but you've got my wife who's Methodist, me who was raised Catholic, who has the Jewish side to him as well, and then my daughter who went to up until this few weeks ago went to a what used to be a Church of Christ school. You got those three, and we're trying to find a church home. And that really has less to do with, obviously, with the denomination and more to do with just the people we feel comfortable with. We've been in cathedrals. We've been in a school gym. We're just trying to find people
you're exactly right. And it takes some looking. It's not about us not being satisfied. That's partly, but it's also about us finding one that speaks to us. And we went to probably 6 or 7 different churches before we arrived at the one that we felt speaks to us. So I just want you to know from now on, I'm going to call you a Catholic with a side of Jew. I think that's.
Well, I call myself a Catholic Jew all the time. I get guilt from both sides.
Is that like a Jew with a side of?
Yeah, exactly.
That was terrible.
I have to be careful down here with that joke, though. Up there, I used to get a lot of laughs when I lived in the north, or even further north. I don't. I get a lot of really funny looks down here when I say I'm a Catholic Jew. Yeah. So well, I think we just lost half of our listener base, but we're going to lose the rest of them when we stop the recording anyways. So
we are probably some might hang on. We love our listeners.
We do too. We do. We sure do. And hopefully after all of this, they'll come back and listen to us next week.
People say you should not talk about religion and politics. We just did all of that in the course of like 20 minutes. And I think we fixed a lot of things.
I think so too. I mean, that's what we're here for. We're here to fix other people's problems, to fix the world's problems.
Ignore our own and fix others.
Exactly. Right.
I love you, Nick.
Love you too, John. Have a great week. Talk to you soon.
Okay. See ya.